praying on what to share this evening, and my thought process always kind of takes some twists and turns. But I was brought to this passage of scripture because I was dwelling on what do we do now when you know that you need change and when you know that something doesn't set right with you. A thought that came in my spirit earlier this week is, like with churches, because there's not a lot of desire for growth in the world. And you ever notice people, I saw someone talk about looking for a church, and someone in the comments, they said, yeah, but you got to find exactly what fits you. And yes, there's a place that fits everybody, but I said people as a whole, people don't want to learn. So intentionally, if something that they expose something that induces change or induces growth, people intentionally avoid that just so they can stay in their comfort pocket of oblivion the entire time. People, they got to find what fits them, not them change and not them grow. And yes, some things, I always warned of the perils of man-made doctrines and things, but people tend to not want personal growth. It's like the quote, everybody wants to build, but nobody wants to do any maintenance. And people can no longer tell the difference between who they truly are and who they want to be. A lot of social media things of the world. So, it led me to this passage, Nehemiah. Now, there's some examples here that are important. Nehemiah, the time and place was, you got to look at the Babylonian captivity, and he was upset because the walls, Scripture talks about the walls being burned down, the gates, it was destroyed. These walls were destroyed. Now, walls are a symbol of unity sometimes. Walls are also they're a defensive weapon. And without the walls, our community is at risk. Our personal life is at risk. But the ones that I've been focusing on with this particular passage are these mental walls. And you've got to learn how to isolate yourself and remove yourself from the influence of others in order to truly receive the message that God would have you receive, to change your life, to change those that are watching you. Because so many people, again, they don't have a personal faith. That's the danger of, I call it the drug of choice of religion, is religion cares not whether you're delivered. Now, our Creator does, because you're here for an assignment. He has a reason you're here. But, when I was in the worst mental state I've ever been in my life, I was a very religious person, but I was not a delivered person. I wasn't a changed person. So when you look at, that example, you got to know that some people are being deceived from influences, from outside sources. And, I have that when I'm driving. It's always on my lunch break when I'm driving back to work and I'm coming over the overpass in a place you cannot pull over. Someone will come to me and I don't want to write it down. And I always say, I got to remember that till I get back to the office so I can write that down. But something came in my mind earlier today about the deception. And it's a deceiver doesn't know who they truly are. Neither a deceiver or the people being deceived know who they are. All they know, the deceiver knows what he wants others to be, and the person being deceived knows who others want them to be. They don't know who they truly are. Therefore, they have no personal faith. But Nehemiah was distraught. Scripture says he wept, at what was going on, the devastation of that he loved that which he was attached to, because it symbolized solidarity away from, captivity, away from Babylon. One thing about walls is sometimes those walls get burned down and you can go and be free, but you're so used to the wall you don't want to go outside of that. Think about how people are creatures of habit and they repeat the same thing day in and day out. That's why people say I have a great life, but I still struggle with problem A, B, C, because you're still staying in those walls. You can't see them and they're not there, but that belief in unbelief is what has got you down. Because, that's the only limitation, right? If you don't believe in limitation, you ain't got to worry about it. So Nehemiah he decided to do something. He wants to, we got to rebuild these walls. Unity of our people. Seeking the will of the Most High. If Nehemiah 2, and then starting verse 12. And I arose in the night, I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon. And notice Jerusalem, see these walls are around Jerusalem. Jerusalem means peace in Hebrew. So notice, my peace is worth protecting. it is worth investing what I need to in order to protect my peace, in order to know, my true well-being. It is worth investing the resources I have. He didn't wait on a grant. He didn't, take up pass a hat around. He said, we got to get to work. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you working? It says, and I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, and to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. Then I went on to the gate of the fountain and to the king's pool, but there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the brook, and viewed the wall, and turned back, and entered by the gate of the valley, and so returned. So he had to survey the damage that was done. How many of us have ever been in a personal situation in which we have witnessed the walls of our peace become consumed and burned? I've been distraught. I've gone through seasons in which my emotions overcame me. I've gone through seasons in which my own vices and what I'd given into had burned my Jerusalem. And I allowed it to. In those time periods, the enemy has to have agreement with us. We have to choose to be trapped by that destruction. Oftentimes I was praying on this passage, and oftentimes we become trapped by the destruction of our peace when we don't want to be in the present, don't we? You ever meet those people that all they dwell on is the past, whether it was right that they did or wrong that they did? And not only that, normally they're discontented, and they always think about the future. When I get this, when I get that different house, or when I get this different job, or when my family does this. You meet those men. When I get that kind of wife, I'll be a good. No, you won't. You got to change yourself. But, people are not content in the present. And right here in the present is the only place that the Father can do His will with your life. So right here in the present is the time to receive peace. Receive that gift of peace. But notice that the peace was being destroyed, and he was distraught by this. In verse 16 it says, and the rulers knew not whither I went, or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. Then said I unto them, ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come and let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more reproach. That there's no more disdain, no more separation between us and peace, no more reproach. But it says, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. Oftentimes, like I said, with the element with separation, look at Christ. He was tempted while separated in the desert. You have to learn to overcome temptations when it's just you all by yourself too. Many people can do the right thing when others are looking. They live the politician lifestyle. When you're amongst everybody that has the eyes on you, you're one of the best-hearted people you know. Then behind closed doors, it's not always the same. Many people can be that style of person. But when you can do the right thing all by yourself and not succumb to anger, greed, lust, all these emotions, all by yourself when no one is looking. Because it's easier to slip into the wrong thing when no one's around you, or when just your family's around you. When those that you don't care about the opinion thereof, it's real easy to do what's wrong. Or, are we able to separate? Walls can separate you from the chaos. See, you can use the example with the walls being a good or a bad thing. But, walls provide separation from the chaos. They provide community. They provide, protection, sustenance. But when too many people knows what is going on as well, again, when you're not separated, we're all here on assignment, and we have to, as a separated individual, proceed in that assignment. When too many people know what's going on, you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it leads to too much seasoning, too much sodium. It don't taste good. It's bad for you, which I like salt. But when too many people know what's going on, so that's why oftentimes we have to not let the enemy hear our plans, but not just the enemy, those that are around us, among us. Because, like I always say, it's not always the people that you're around every day that's really rooting for you. Normally it's those that are watching that you don't know that are really advocating for you. The people, people that you grew up with probably aren't the ones that are wanting you to succeed in rebuilding these walls to your peace, because they've always gotten used to you being broken down. They've always gotten used to you being a miserable person. And then along the way, they became miserable, and misery loves company, and they want everybody to be miserable. But I want peace. I want to rebuild the walls. I don't want to be stuck in the captivity of Babylon. Because Babylon was a nation of idolaters that valued the physical and did not understand the spiritual, and were not willing to give in, not willing to be changed, not willing for growth. Nehemiah 4, starting verse 3, my last passage of scripture here, says, Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, Even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. Hear, O God, for we are despised, and turn their reproach up upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. And cover not their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out from before thee. For they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. So built we the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof. For the people, notice these last few words, had a mind to work. They had a mind to work. They had a how are you doing kind of mind. They had a mind that wants peace. They had a mind that was willing to take action, that was willing to utilize the power that the Most High gives us to create. If we're not put here to destroy, we're not put here to be destroyed either. We need to quit that lifestyle of living as though we're just burdened out, hopeless, cursed people, because that's not the case. If we have a God of love, a God that is love, then he loves us and he wants us to overcome. He wants us not to be burdened with Babylon, burdened with captivity. But as we take an inventory of our lives, and notice, it even illustrates, it says, Tobiah the Ammonite was back. It gives these names. So, previous passage, he wouldn't let the workers know thereof. And then you still have people that are coming in, pretending to be those that they are not, that are wreaking havoc in the kingdom because they didn't have any walls, didn't have any gates. One of the big problems they had in Jerusalem during this time, when the walls were not, when they were burned and destroyed, is you had merchants that would come in to the area, and they honored the Sabbath. But merchants would come in and trade, so they would get the people of the Most High to break their commandments in the name of their business and their merchandise. We don't have that today, do we? Every day, that's all we have. Look how much money we spend with the devil. Look how much money we give in that direction and think not and question not his products and his resources and the things that he provides for our life. So they were, all these merchants, and they were pretending to be as though they were from Jerusalem. They're pretending to be as though they are one of them. Peace, comes out in the wash. Peace is the truth of the Most High. But a vice, or I call them spiritual parasites. The other day, someone was asking me a question, and it came to me, there's a lot of spiritual parasites in this world. These people that were getting them to break the commandments of the Most High in the name of merchandise could be considered acting as a spiritual parasite, because you don't know oftentimes where the parasite is, but you know when it makes you sick. But then you kind of think, you ever had food poisoning and you kind of remember that food truck you ate at? You know then, you put it together, but it takes you a while. But the thing about a parasite that stuck out to me, and I'll share this in detail in another sermon, but the two ways they enter in. So, consider the fact that Nehemiah was weeping, he was hurting, his people were hurting. Their land was ravaged, they were in captivity. But a parasite typically enters in through, maybe have a cut on your foot, you're walking on the ground, or maybe you eat some food that you shouldn't have. Wounds, trauma, and consumption. That's why our people needs healing. Our people needs healing from all previous trauma. Our people needs healing from these wounds, because we'll bring things in we don't need, and make just like they had brought in people that were considered enemies and let them pretend that they were not their enemies, but these people had ill intent for them. But when I'm weakened by my trauma and weakened by these wounds, I let these spiritual parasites come in my life. And then all these people that are not people of the Most High, because they're choosing to not live like it, are robbing me. I told someone a while back, you're not poor, you're just being robbed. We're just allowing the enemy to rob us of our peace and our resources. And we'll do this sometimes just to please the the parasites, or Scripture calls them dogs, many different things. But that's not what we should do. We should build walls and claim back what's ours, our peace, our hope, our faith. We've allowed walls that we should have built walls in our community. We should have built walls all in our life, our workplaces. But we have allowed people that aren't us to populate our thought process, populate what we do. You know, it's so odd what they take out. You know, someone mentioned, they said, they don't want people to pray in school, but yet you swear on the Bible. I said, well, God's not the author of confusion. But as more morally speaking, we need to build walls. Well, we don't even talk about what we need to build walls about because our peace is disturbed. And we need help, and we can't help anyone else till we get our peace. You know, notice in verse 8 it says, and conspired all them together to come and to fight against Jerusalem, to hinder it. So these were enemies that were conspired to hinder Jerusalem because of their state, their traumatized state, their state in which they didn't have defense. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God and set a watch against them day and night because of them. So the thing is to be able to work and let the Most High overcome our enemies. It's not pretending that we are one of the enemies and not pretending the enemies don't exist, but to be able to overcome their temptations and their corruption. It's not to be corrupted by the enemy. And look at what people do in the name of a dollar. Look at what people do in the name of, popularity or, their own trauma. There's a quote that I read today, another thing, a note I took, but it's William S. Burroughs. And he has a quote that says, the junk merchant doesn't sell his product to the consumer. He sells the consumer to his product. He does not improve and simplify his merchandise. He degrades and simplifies the client. That's deeper than we realize, but as society progresses, because we are not building walls and establishing the peace and getting healing over our trauma and not consuming things that contain spiritual parasitic attachments, what's happening is we're degrading as the client. We're intaking anything you tell us because we're becoming more and more without identity, without the identity of God's people, and we're being invaded. And again, a parasite doesn't, it eats at the expense of its host. We're the ones that's suffering. The enemy's making merchandise off of it. They're not suffering. They will, but it's merchandising. So, think about that. He degrades and simplifies the client. Like I said, many people are seduced into being religious people, but they ain't worried about being righteous people. And we have to get back to being righteous people. So that goes back to the phrase, how are you doing? Are you building a wall of peace and helping? Because notice, there was different phases in Nehemiah's life. Building the wall. Well, first he had to realize the wall needed building. So you got to take that step out of ignorant oblivion, realize the wall needs building. But then he was working on building a future. We should be working on building a future for our children, for our grandchildren. People that really establish generational empires think about the great-great-great-grandkids. It's not just, our kids, but the grandkids and future generations. So he worked on building a future and then also building lives. Because once you've established peace and once you've established a plan for the future, then you can start establishing helping others' lives. But if you're wounded, without defense, without protection, without the ability to be secluded in your own peace, without the influence of others, then you're not going to be able to build your life, let alone anybody else's. So, all we can place it in captivity. Many people have a limited will, and they think it's okay to spend a limited time in captivity. But if you do that, you'll get used to it. And like I said, the only barrier between your freedom and your deliverance is your belief in, I believe the Most High can do anything. And I believe that if I align myself with His word, His will, He will equip, He anoints, He appoints, He provides what we need. But we've forgotten our identity. We've forgotten what we're supposed to do. We've forgotten we have a mind to work. So we don't know how we're doing because we let them tear the walls down. We let them tear the walls down long ago, but they can be rebuilt. These altars are open if anyone needs prayer,